Williams. All right, so there you go. It is Indiana in the Morning. It's WCCS 101.1 FM, AM 1160, and WCCSradio.com. Well, he had to come in today by sled dog, and with no snow, it's kind of hard to get those things moving. But Mr. Pollock is in the studio with us this morning. Our conversation is brought to you by Marcus & Mack, voted best personal injury law firm in the Best of Indiana County contest. Marcus & Mack, a law firm representing injured people. Good morning.
Good morning.
It's good that you're with us here today.
I made it. The wheels were rusty, since there wasn't any snow for the sleds to work.
Yeah. You'd probably could make a few sparks off those sled runners, huh?
Yeah, it was heated things up.
There was the Consumer Electronics Show in Vegas this week, and one of the things that they introduced was a flower pot or a plant pot that moves with the sun, and it'll beg for water if the plant says, "I'm thirsty." How about that?
Yeah, that's amazing.
Take something like that, huh? But then you got to feed. You got to give them the water.
Somehow you have to. They have electronically figured out how to automatically water.
Yeah. But I thought that was kind of cool.
Which they could probably figure out how to do.
Yeah. I want to get out into the yard today. I noticed as I was out in the yard walking this week, number one, the moles are going nuts. So that's pretty mountainous right now. But there is a weed. It's a flat-leafed weed that since the fall has really taken over the front of my lawn and is, I can see now, starting to make its way into other parts of the lawn as well. The leaf is about an inch wide, and it's shaped like a football, and it's purple, and it grows in clusters. The question isn't what is that weed, because I didn't take a picture of it to show you. The question is, when you have weeds such as that and you're at this point of the season, what are you supposed to do about things like that to ensure that they don't become even worse come the spring and its growing season arrives?
Little challenging this time of year. We typically aren't controlling weeds or really even thinking about it right now. It is in a group of, it likely could be in a group of winter annual weeds. Mm-hmm. So those germinate in the fall or early winter. Mm-hmm. And, of course, we've had open conditions and everything and a little bit warmer that's made things easier. And occasionally when we get the sun out, those seeds, can just warm up enough that those seeds can germinate and those plants can get going. Mm-hmm. But they like this kind of weather. And there's a group that fits into the brassica family. Like yellow rocket is one of those. It's a little early for it yet. Chickweed is another one that will germinate and grow during the winter. And even if we get a little bit of snow on the ground, they'll germinate underneath that. They like to do it not so much in the yard, but in where there was looser soil, where we maybe had our garden, or our perennial beds or annual beds, landscape beds. They'll tend to germinate and grow in there over the winter. Mm-hmm. And then they'll mature. They're in that group that matures early in the spring, just after snow melt or when we get into March and early April. Those will all mature, go to seed, and some of those have seeds that shoot, that when you get near that plant or, you're walking and you touch it, it'll literally, you'll hear this noise or you'll see it, and they'll be shooting all their seeds off. Which will then lay there until next fall, and winter, and then they'll be germinating now. A lot of those weeds aren't of a big deal, especially the annual ones, because they are annual. They have one cycle per year. There's other weeds, of course, that are perennial, and a lot of those weeds only germinate by seeds. They're not; those plants aren't living multiple years. So now in the yard, again, depending on whether it's an annual or perennial, especially the annuals, we're not as concerned about that because they don't really outcompete the turf very much.
So maybe next week I'll bring you one.
Yeah. Yep, take a picture or bring one in.
Dig
it up if you can. Of course, early next week, if we're in single digits where they were saying we might be, it might be hard to dig one up.
You want to weed and feed with that? Is that what you want to do in the springtime?
Yeah, if it's still a problem in the spring, and if it's a perennial weed, again, if it's an annual, it might go to seed at that point and die. The plant will die. If it's a perennial, then it'll keep going, and then like a dandelion.
Well, it wasn't there when I was chopping leaves, but it seems to have taken over that yard. It's really thick. So I don't know. I was not happy to see that.
No, it snuck in there. There was enough moisture in the ground that those could germinate and start to grow and mat out.
Yeah. Yeah, so that's something that we'll contend with here, and
keep an eye on it.
Oh, yeah, we'll keep an eye on it, but I'll also bring a sample in and show it to you.
And some of those plants you said about clumps, some of those that germinate from seed to begin with will tend to grow in clumps. Now they can fill in and make a carpet after a while, but again, clump plants you might be able to, if there aren't that many, and if they're just getting started. Digging those out, if you've got your little fork tool and everything like you can use on the dandelions, a lot of times
they're all through that yard.
But that's when they become more spread out and more of them all over the place, then we got to look at say, can I do this by hand, or do I need to use a weed and feed type product, especially if it's a broadleaf plant, to take care of that.
Well, I have always said the name of my spacious estate is Weed Patch, and it's living up to its name right now.
They'll always have a way to keep coming back.
High wind warnings mean there are trees coming down.
Yep,
There are branches coming down. There are trees coming down. Yeah. We need to be careful about that.
Yep.
But in a sense, they're going to clean out a lot of our trees too, aren't they? Because those dead branches will come down.
Yes, it will. Clean those out. Hopefully, they're in a place where they won't do harm to people or property. Hence, why we try to keep a little bit ahead of that if we can. Mm-hmm. Be observant of that this year. This time of year, when the leaves aren't on there, sometimes it's easier to see what's alive and what's dead as far as the branches go. Yeah. Just keeping a lookout for that, especially anything that's growing near property that we would prefer not to have damaged, and then take care of that if need be.
Yeah. So all of those things
out in the woods, the woods kind of takes care of itself for the most part.
Part of the mix. One of the things I thought of the other day is when the ground is soggy as it is now, and as it will continue to be for the rest of the winter and the spring too. We really need to watch for the lean of a tree. If that tree starts to really lean, then that could be a real problem, especially if it's leaning toward the house.
Yes, if the root system is not as intact as it should be, we can get root rot and decay over time that will then weaken that tree, and then you've got this big, huge tree there with a lot of weight, and then resistance in the wind becomes less able to stabilize itself, and so you can start to get a lean. We often see that on evergreen trees because they've got their needles year round, and so that becomes more of when the wind hits that, it takes more effort to keep that thing standing up straight, and so oftentimes those are the ones we see topple over.
And they're very soft wood
when the ground's really wet.
Yeah. All right. Well, we got some things in.
Couple things in, yes.
Even though we were a bit late getting started. Appreciate that. It is the voice of Indiana County. It's WCCS 101.1 FM, AM 1160, WCCSradio.com. How many days at the farm show for you this week? Just last weekend? Or
last
weekend.
Front end of it. Yep.
Had some fun, though?
Yeah.
Cool.
Yeah, there were still a fair amount of people there, despite the weather that came in.
Here we go. Fox News on the way.